Think of any API you've used this week. Stripe, Resend, Vercel, Anthropic, OpenAI. What do they all have in common? They all use API keys. And there's a good reason for that, which we're going to cover today. Also, we're going to give you 9 ways to get API keys just right. So why are API keys the right choice for many folks? If we look at some of the best API first companies in the world, I'm thinking people like Stripe, like Resend, I'll include Supabase in this category, then API keys are their default choice. It's the most common used authentication mechanism to call their APIs. And that's partly because, or mostly because I'm calling Stripe on behalf of Zuplo. And we'll get into why that's important in a minute. I'm calling on behalf of an organization or on behalf of an identity. A big reason for this, and it actually goes back to Twilio, another great API first company, is people worry about the time to first call. How long does it take an API consumer, a developer trying to use your API, to be successful in making their first successful transaction with that API? You are going to get a better first call time using an API key than you are using one of the alternatives. It's just much easier for developers to use, cleaner, it can be curled. We're seeing lots of agents using API keys also because it's easier. Now, we can't talk about this without talking about the obvious alternative to API keys, which might be OAuth, which is great. And it really feels great because it's a standard. I think one of the things that's challenging about API keys sometimes is it's not a standard. So the rest of this video will be 9 things you need to do, which I think of as kind of a standard you want to achieve in API keys. But OIDC, OAuth is an actual standard. And it's great for certain use cases. In particular, I recommend OAuth or OIDC if your user, the consumer of the API, is identifying as authenticating as an individual, like as Josh. If they're authenticating as an entity, as an organization like Zuplo, then I think API keys is arguably a better choice. We also sometimes get dragged into the security debate. First and foremost, these amazing companies have been using API keys as the authentication mechanism for their APIs for some time. I just don't really accept that they're fundamentally flawed and can't be secured. I mean, Stripe has the keys to your house, it's your payment gateway. It's a very valid and can be completely secure approach. There are some best practices, which we'll talk about in this video, that help you make sure you're delivering a secure approach. Obviously, Zuplo can help with that as well, but if the purpose of this video is to help you if you're trying to do this yourself. Really, if you use Zuplo, you just get all these for free. But actually, there are some trade-offs. There are arguably some things that are more secure about API keys than are OAuth and JWT or JOT tokens. The scopes and claims in a JOT token are just base64 encoded. You can take any JOT token you find on the internet and go and decode it and look inside it and perhaps get clues to the security infrastructure or the claims profile of a JOT token. With an API key, you typically can't do that because it's just an opaque string. There are trade-offs to both approaches, but I don't think anyone can say one is better because it is more secure. I'm a big fan. Zuplo is a big fan. All of our customers are big fans. The best API first companies in the world are clearly big fans of API keys. So that's when we think it's the right call. There are exceptions. Again, if you're doing OAuth on behalf of user identity, it's 100% fine that you want to use OAuth. You should. And Zuplo supports that too. We don't have objections to an OAuth flow. So I promised you 9 best practices. The first one is a big decision you've got to make. And I'm gonna kind of bottle the best practice on this one, actually, and not so much give you a best practice as kind of tell you that you've got a decision to make. So the best practice is make a decision. And that is, are you gonna make your API keys retrievable or irretrievable? What do I mean by that? Well, you'll notice if you log into some experiences and generate an API key in, say, AWS, I think in Anthropic, or in Stripe, you can only get that key once. And once you cut and paste that key out of that portal, you'll never get that key again. They won't let you access it once more. You'll have to generate a new key if you lose it. Some services like Resend, Supabase, etc. They support retrievable keys. That means I can go back into my portal and I'll be able to get the key at any time. Zuplo by default does retrievable keys, but you can absolutely build to do irretrievable on the Zuplo platform. There are some different technical practices that you might follow inside your data storage. So some would argue that irretrievable keys are the most secure. And here's why. If someone gets your AWS credentials, which would be pretty bad anyway, because they could probably generate a new key, so I wouldn't call that the main thing, but if someone got your AWS credentials, they can get the key that you created before and reuse it. If the company doing irretrievable keys is actually engineering it correctly, those keys will not be stored in a recoverable format. They'll be hashed in a one-way hash, so that key is gone forever. So if someone stole your database or broke into AWS's database or something, then no one would be able to get the keys because it's just a hash which wouldn't be usable. So, there's a good argument that says that, hey, maybe this is more secure, but I think there's a more nuanced viewpoint to take on this. Why do we do retrievable keys by default? Well, just because we find it more common, frankly. It's my personal preference as well, and I'll tell you why. I'm not going to give a strong recommendation on this. This is your choice. Decide where you think you fit. Some people say if you're a big company with important stuff, you should do irretrievable. If you're a small company or your customers are casual, you should do retrievable. That doesn't feel like a good way of making the decision to me. I think the reason why one can legitimately argue that retrievable keys are more secure is because what do people do with an irretrievable key? The minute you create your AWS key, I've been guilty of this, only in development environments, so obviously I would never do it, well, they don't let me access the Zuplo prod keys, thankfully, but when I'm playing with a new piece of software and I'm dealing with an irretrievable key, what do I do with it? I immediately post it into Notepad or Sublime so I don't lose it. And then do I remember to get rid of that? Probably, but that's clearly not a secure thing. That step that the irretrievable key forces you to do makes, in some people's eyes, retrievable keys a better solution. I'll let you decide which one you want to do. Super easy on Zuplo to do retrievable. Those keys should be stored encrypted. Now, they can't be hashed because the UI needs to be able to pull them out the database and reverse them, but they should be stored encrypted, which obviously they are if you use Zuplo's API key solution. But this video is about building your own, so these are the decisions you've got to make. So best practice number one is make a decision about whether you're going to do retrievable or irretrievable keys. One of the other interesting things about API keys, that's when comparing them to JOT tokens in particular, is that they support a different security profile in that they're easy to revoke. Typically, a well-designed API key implementation allows an administrator or potentially even a user to go and delete the API key and immediately revoke it to prevent it being used. That's actually quite hard to do with a JOT token. So if a JOT token has a long refresh period or ends up out in the wild, it's hard to kill that JOT token. It kind of has a life of its own now. You might have to go and kill all the certs or add it to some kind of block list, which you may not support. API keys typically support quick revocation, which is one other really nice thing about them from a security perspective. Now, having said that, it's important when you're designing your API key experience that you support that revocation, so support the deleting of an API key, but also offer the developer or the API consumer a rolling period for the key. So what does that mean? It means, let's say I'm on a Zoom call and I accidentally expose the API key to somebody. Might be in the environment variables file, who knows where it is. I exposed it on a Zoom call. I'm in a panic now. I need to delete that key, I need to get it changed, but I can't do it right away because I'll take down the service that is dependent on it. So what I'm gonna do is gonna go and generate or roll my key, which will generate a new key. The old key would typically have some expiry set on it now. And then as soon as I've done the switch over in my production or whatever system is depending on that key, I can actually just go and delete the old key at that point. So revocation is one of my favorite things about API keys, but you've got to design that capability into your API key offering. The other thing you need to think about is that you need to think about showing the date of creation in the UI. Some people like to roll a key based on how long it's been around, how long it's existed for. And to help them do that, you should show the date and the age of the key in the UI. Obviously, if you're using Zuplo and Sudoku, we do that for you. But if you're going to build your own solution, then you should make sure you include that nice little detail to help those who are strict and cross their T's and dot their I's. One of the key things you're going to need to get right if you're implementing your own API key solution is performance. So you need to check that API key on every single request that comes into your API. One thing you can do that can help you with that as well is to add a checksum at the end of the key. That is typically, some form of hash of the prior part of the key. I'm not going to teach you how to do checksumming on this video. Go and look it up or ask your favorite AI. But adding a checksum allows you to very quickly, typically in memory, do a quick verification to be sure that this key was at least at one time issued by your API key server. So it's a bit like a JWT's verification after the last dot in a JOT token. So make sure you're doing API keys right. I think this next one is actually one of the most important best practices, and that is support secret scanning. So you'll see on screen here now is the GitHub blog announcing our partnership with GitHub, where Zuplo's API keys support GitHub secret scanning. What often happens just by accident, by a little oopsie here and there, is a developer will check an API key because it's a piece of text that can go into a source file or an environment variable file or an environment a setup.environment file can accidentally be pasted in there, which happens, it's unfortunate, but hey, so can client secrets and client IDs in OAuth. With API keys that support secret scanning, they are detected by platforms like GitHub. They can be blocked, so they won't allow that check-in to go ahead. If they do get checked in, if you're using Zuplo's solution, we've already partnered with GitHub here, so we get a notification and we can cancel that key for you or contact you depending on your settings. But you can also apply to the GitHub secret scanning program yourself. It takes a little while. If you want to do it the easy way, you can do it with us. But if you're building your own, you must have secret scanning. Let's talk more about API key performance. Your API key check is going to have to happen on every API call. You're going to have to be confident that the API key is a valid API key. You're going to have to be sure of that. Now, going back to your API key storage mechanism, whether that's a database encrypted or hashed, depending on your approach, is going to probably be quite slow for every request. So you're going to want to make smart use of caching. I would have a short time to live, potentially cache in memory, or if you've got some kind of high performance cache near where your compute is stored, you could use that as well. Obviously do this with Cur. That time to live should be very short because this is going to increase revocation time. If you have a cache and you cache that thing for 30 seconds, when you revoke the key, the cache won't know that it's been revoked until it has to go and refresh from the database, which will extend the revocation time by 30 seconds. Most people are comfortable with that trade-off in exchange for crazy fast performance on the API, because this latency you're going to add to every single API request. So you want to make sure that it's crazy quick. It's also sometimes smart being careful to not blow the memory on wherever you're storing this cache to store invalid keys. You might get an invalid key that has been revoked or just a made up key. Often it's quicker to keep a list of those somewhere very fast and check that before you go off to your database and put load on your database. This is going to help with any kind of denial of service attack that's involving your API key infrastructure. Or you could just use Zuplo, which does all this for you and has a highly distributed, globally deployed, globally synchronizing network of storage with a highly optimized cache in front of it. Earlier on, I mentioned that occasionally there might be a little oopsie and you should end up showing the API key on a screen sharing session or in front of someone stood by your desk. And maybe you're worried. Everyone's got a camera these days. Everyone's got a phone or with a camera on it. So, it's nice that we have that rolling because you built in key rolling, right? You built in the UI to allow people to roll it, and you built in a rolling transition period. But actually, maybe we can help people even more. Now, this is important. Always hide the API key in your UI. When you're presenting the API key to the user, this is an obvious best practice. You've seen this yourself when you've used Stripe or your other favorite API key API. Make sure you hide it and make the user take an action to reveal it. If you're being particularly fastidious, you might only load the API key into the memory of the client when the user
clicks that action to reveal the key. But as a minimum, you should absolutely hide that key unless the user clicks the reveal button so that it's only displayed when they're intending to take the key. Honestly, you should also provide a copy button so that they don't need to reveal the key, they can just copy it. I give a lot of demos in Zuplo. The keys that I give demos on aren't important, but it's nice that I could just copy that key and not reveal it to the user.
One of the practices I really stand by, even more so now, is that your key probably needs separators in it, like dots or dashes or underscores to create different fragments to make the key more readable. Please use an underscore so that it looks snake case. You can see an example on screen right now. And the reason for that is it's much easier to double click wherever that key is and copy that key to the clipboard. Now, when we did the first version of this video, what, 3-4 years ago now, someone put a really annoying comment on that said, you shouldn't need to do that. You should have a vault manager and, just essentially that shouldn't be a necessary thing. You're micro optimizing. I wish I had a Dogecoin for every single time I've been annoyed by an API key that didn't use underscores since. And it was a valid use case. It wasn't like I was doing anything wild. There are many reasons why you may end up having to cut and paste keys. Maybe it's just during development, right? It might not be your production keys, but I have to send it to someone. I have to put it in 1Password and send it from there, or whatever tool you're using to securely send secrets to colleagues that need to work with them. There's just so many reasons. So just do the right thing and design your API key to use snake case or underscores to break up any sections of your key, please.
This last one is a golden oldie. It is very simply label your keys. You don't have to have the whole key be a secret. Some part of it can be some kind of label as a string, and the best players do this. So, Stripe and Anthropic and OpenAI and Vercel and all these folks, they will start their keys with something like SK, which signifies this is a secure key, underscore. See, underscore, because they know it's very important that you use snake case so people can cut and paste these damn keys. Live, underscore, and then the key, and live indicates it's a real key and not a test key. Now this is useful not just for Stripe themselves, they get value in it if they see a key, they know what it's for. For you as a user of the key, you know what that key's purpose is by looking at it. But also a third party, like maybe Zuplo, for example, because we have a monetization product now where you can monetize your API. And to do that, we hook into Stripe to do the invoicing. We do all the metering and all that good stuff for you in the developer portal and the pricing and the subscriptions. The metering goes into Stripe, and then we send an invoice to your customer through them. And to do that, we need an API key to act on your behalf to call Stripe. And we can tell whether you put the right key in because we can see by the nature of the key what type of key it is. So that's one nice thing and one other reason why you should label your keys. That's what a great API key service does. Zuplo does it, of course, ZPKA underscore. As you can tell by the lighting here at Zuplo HQ, it's getting laid out now and dark, and we're ready to wrap our V2 of API Key Best Practices video. You've had 9 best practices, hopefully some useful nuggets in there, one big decision to make about irretrievable, retrievable, and we will follow this video up with more detail on how to build that high performance cache if you decide to go it alone. Of course, you can use Zuplo, and we'll do all this stuff for you very easily and give you a developer portal that makes it crazy, incredibly easy to achieve all of these things we've talked about today. So you might want to give that a shot too, but whatever you do, best of luck and have fun with API keys. That's the 9 tips. Just